1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast, is proudly sponsored by The Terrace, the home of retro and fan culture sports merchandising. Check out their range of Forest merch by visiting theterracestore.com or visit them on social media.
The 1865 Match Report.
Hello there and welcome to the 1865 Match Report on a very special evening for Forest fans, as the Reds have taken another Premier League scalp at home, beating Leicester by 4 goals to 1. I think there's much to enjoy about today's performance. Now, in a second, I'll be joined by Baz, but before that, I'll just give you a summary of the surprising team news from today, which was we did have Samba in goal and we did have Davis, Zinckernagel and Johnson up front as expected. However, we did have 2 or 3 changes that were unexpected. Steve Cook retained his place in the defence despite having looked in trouble with his calf injury last week. And Joe Worrall came back, and as Colin Frey said on Radio Nottingham, we're expecting him to be out for 6 weeks, and it's more like 6 days. Baz, the Reds reverted to the 3-4-3 formation, and I think it's a move that paid off. I think that's Forest's best way of playing with their personnel, and the transfer dealings seem to suggest that that's the way they want to stay, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I said I'll watch when I was watching it. I said to my friend, "This looks like probably our strongest lineup with a couple of surprises in with the return of Cook and Worrall, but there's no like chucking in the kids and treating the FA Cup as an afterthought. This was a very, very strong lineup in a very, very strong formation, and it was quite obvious. Yeah, we wanted to win this game.
But it's also worth pointing out, I suppose, that Leicester, they've got some players out, and the most notable ones in terms of first teamers, probably Jamie Vardy and Johnny Evans, but they still put out what, with the exception of Danny Ward in goal instead of Kasper Schmeichel, was probably the strongest team that they could have played as well. So they had over £100 million worth of talent on there. They brought in a £20+ million striker at half time. So this is not a result to be sniffed at. Now let's talk through the actual action. You could tell it was a match that the players were fired up for, couldn't you?
Yeah, definitely. And the what impressed me most about us was, the same thing. There was no thinking, let's sit tight against a higher league opposition. It was like, this is the Steve Cooper way. We're going to go at them and see what we can get out of this. And I thought it was pretty even in terms of chances and whatever. There wasn't really that much in it, but they looked rattled right from the off as well, especially with Brennan Johnson.
Yes, that's true. The right-hand side, actually, as much as Brennan Johnson, I thought that Jed Spence was in a bit of a duel with Luke Thomas, 2 young fullbacks, and Spence had Thomas on toast a lot of the time. And if anything, actually, Spence was a bit guilty of taking him on a one-to-one a bit too many times in those first 20 minutes when perhaps he could have used players around him. It's worth pointing out that it wasn't all one-way traffic, though. I thought it was pretty noticeable that Harvey Barnes on the left wing for Leicester, he was really trying to exploit the space in behind Spence in the pocket where Worrall was having to cover. And that did cause the returning captain a few problems, didn't it?
Yeah, and again, like you said, it's not 6 weeks, it was 6 days. So how recovered he was, there was a couple of points I thought he seemed a little bit caught for pace a little bit as well, or a little bit slow to react maybe, so lacking a bit of sharpness.
Okay, yeah. I would say that I think that Leicester had the first effort which seemed to be on target. There was a corner, and set pieces at both ends are going to be a talking point, I think. Leicester looked probably most threatening when they had set pieces, and they took a corner. I think Maddison took it, and it meant that who was it? Ademola Lookman. It was a training ground routine, cut back to Lookman on the edge of the box. He hit it fairly powerfully. I have no idea whether Samba would have seen it, but it was immaterial because it bounced off Jimmy Garner's chest and out for a corner, and the keeper would have been nowhere if it had been the wrong side of the post. So that was a warning shot from Leicester. But then it didn't take long after that before Forest suddenly found themselves really in the ascendant. And it was not a goal that kickstarted it. It was actually an effort that hit the bar. And this was symptomatic of the way that Forest were attacking, because we basically got men into the box. The ball popped up, it popped around a little bit, popped up, and then Keenan Davis, on about 16 yards out at a funny angle, he basically did his impression of James Rodriguez's famous goal in the World Cup of 2014, where he chested it at a funny angle, looked up, and just swung his left leg at it, hit it really powerfully, really true. You could argue, couldn't you? He hit it too well, and it came off the angle of post and bar. And that was the first proper warning shot, wasn't it?
It was, and I mean, technically, I'm not a footballer. There's no way I could have done that. I think there's not very many strikers who could have even had the audacity to attempt that. It was a really, really, really good strike.
And Davis there's a sign of a player who's feeling confident and is feeling loved, which is a topic that we talked about in our transfer window podcast. Steve Cooper makes his players feel loved, doesn't he? And that's a real contrast.
Yeah.
You see them playing with joy, don't you? And that joy came to life just a few minutes later when Forest took the lead. Talk us through the first goal.
This is the thing. I think Davis's physicality and his presence had them running all over the place. It was like they'd never played against a big lad before. And it's not like they're not a physical side themselves, but yeah, they didn't know how to deal with him. So when Davis knocked it back down, Zink was pretty much unmarked, hit it with his knee, past their keeper. It was like... And
before we even had time to think about it, Forest was suddenly 2-0 up, and it was so quick that the BBC cameras missed it.
But yes, that was it. It was like, still celebrating the first goal, and then it was like, oh, there's another one. And you can't really complain at that, can you? So his composure to slot it past the keeper was just absolutely incredible. You can see why people wanted to bid so much money for him during the transfer window. Yeah.
So we'll cut to the end and saying that BBC gave Brennan Johnson the man of the match, and you can completely understand why, because what he's shown today is symptomatic of the fact that he's added a real level of high level performance, but consistency. So before, in those little off patches that all players go through, never mind young players, you get those ones where he does the run and then he can't produce a final ball or a finish, or he'll run straight into a defender. Now he's taking his men on, he's beating them, and he's producing end products. And this one, Leicester will be absolutely kicking themselves, because Forest did make a move down the left-hand side with Max Lowe and Zinckernagel kind of combining, but then Lowe lost the ball, but Amati basically passed it with a blind back pass, which is what put Brennan through. And from the tightest of angles, to have the presence of mind to roll his foot over it to get the ball under his control, take a step back, and then nutmeg the keeper is different to the Arsenal match, wasn't it? When the Arsenal match, it was almost like, you know what? We know that Arsenal will play it around at the back, so let them do that. In this one, it was Leicester concede goals from set pieces. Let's make sure we're pressuring them from set pieces. Leicester have got their best ball-playing centre-halves in terms of Evans and Fofana missing. So let's put some pressure on them and hope they panic. And all of these things came true, didn't they? So...
And when I think of the game, it's like I picture it as 6 or 7 Forest players in the box against four Leicester defenders. That's the way it seems to be. We just flooded forwards at them and put that pressure on them, and they didn't know how to cope with it.
Yeah. And then it wasn't long before we got a third goal. And we've talked about set pieces. Now, it's worth pointing out that there was a free kick outside the box at 0-0, which Brennan Johnson took and hit straight into the wall. And I was thinking, that's unusual. I thought Jimmy Garner is our set piece man at the moment. And with the corners he was putting in, I mean, they were causing all kinds of trouble. So there was a corner that came in. Ryan Yates managed to completely miss it, and it came off his shoulder. Zinckernagel had a shot which was parried away effectively by Danny Ward, leading to another corner. So just when we were thinking, oh, we could have gone 3-0 up there, would you even believe it? And then we did. And it's one of those, again, if you're Leicester, you're going, why can't we defend corners? it was a bit comical the way the goal went in again, but it was from a wicked ball by Garner, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It was really, really good delivery. And Joe Worrall, we can come back to this as well. There's another thing to talk about later on, but Joe Worrall showing his commitment, basically. He wanted to stick his head in the way of it, and he did it exactly right.
Yeah, completely. It was, even the BBC pundits were saying, weren't they, that this is down to desires, down to players like Worrall really wanting to get in there, players like Johnson kind of running into that gap where the back pass might go. Those are things that happen when you really have that desire, and also that belief that you can do it. Also worth noting that Joe Worrall, I don't think he meant to do it initially, but he doesn't score very often, and he ran fist pumping in front of the crowd, then realised he was in front of the Leicester fans, so decided to absolutely milk it.
I turned to the bloke I was with and just said, "This is how has this happened?" And he went, "You could have had 6."
Well, exactly. So at this point, we could have had 5, because we had the Davis chance to hit the bar. There's a save by Ward. We had 3 goals, and then just shortly afterwards as well, Jed Spence went through, tight angle. Danny Ward made a save, which was a routine save for a keeper, but nonetheless, we had 6 clear efforts on goal. We could have been 6-0 up, and then just as we were processing that, then all of a sudden, we weren't even 3-0 up. And this, you try not to be too harsh on individuals, do you, when you concede goals or when there are errors made? But unfortunately, this one was all down to Samba, wasn't it?
So I said any time now we're going to start seeing Samba start time wasting, because that's what he does. And he's going to really wind people up, and he's going to look like a prick, but that's what he does. And to be fair, I really like him. And as I think you said once in our WhatsApp group, he may be a prick, but he's our prick. But this, I don't know what was going through his head. The only thing I could think of was he was scared of that pigeon that was on the pitch, because
we joked about it, didn't we? But it's possible that actually the pigeon went in his line of sight or something.
Yeah. So they broke through, played the ball through. Samba comes out to get it, runs away from the pigeon, and whoever it was shoots into an empty net.
Yeah. And it was actually pretty much, it's a hopeful ball down the channels from Maddison, wasn't it? Because Leicester were pinned back at that moment. Samba shouldn't have come for it in the first place. He definitely shouldn't have come for it if he's scared of pigeons. And Iheanacho was, in fairness, Iheanacho did a good job, because it was a tight angle. It would have been easy for him to fluff the shot, but he did exactly what you'd expect a good striker to do in that moment, which is he took the touch, which almost could have took him away from goal, but put it in that little corridor where it evaded McKenna's despairing challenge and was behind Cook, who was running back. And both McKenna and Cook went mental.
It was like a daisy cutter as well, which you'd have thought that's just like, it was one of those where if Cook had just been a bit faster, he could have got to it, but you knew it wasn't going to happen. And yeah, as you say, McKenna was livid, absolutely livid.
What that meant was that we went in at half-time 3-1 up, which normally you'd take, but it did mean that all of a sudden, as fans, that little bit of confidence just drained ever so slightly. Now, I think it's fair to say that despite Leicester bringing on Patson Daka at half-time, changing their formation to go to a back 3, I think it's fair to say that the second half followed a similar pattern to the first half, don't you?
I think they didn't look all at sea as they did in the first half, but they didn't also really make us sweat for it. They probably, if anything, the worst bit for us in the entire game was that bit where Samba made the mistake, and then the few minutes up to halftime afterwards, because we had that moment of doubt. But even once the restart happened, they had chances. They had half chances. There was a few bookings, if I remember right, and it was all a bit more scrappy. But I don't think that worry that oh my God, we've just conceded a goal when we're going to throw this away wasn't in my head for the second half in the same way.
And that worry would have really evaporated on the hour mark-ish when Jed Spence, this was another good footballing goal, wasn't it?
It's one of those. I'm really pleased he got a goal because, yeah, everyone's, even us, we've been talking all about Brennan Johnson, but it's the combination of those two down the right that makes, especially these Premier League teams, run scared.
Mm.
It's not just Johnson's pace and his composure, but it's the fact that he can link up with Jed Spence, who does this amount of running and is not slow himself, that makes this stuff happen. And then he just breaks through and he kind of bundles it in at the end of it, doesn't he? It's a, I don't know. It's a perfect end to the way things should go, and it's someone who absolutely deserves it. And probably more than anyone, I would have given Spence probably the man of the match rather than Johnson. But you can see why Johnson gets it.
Yeah, you absolutely can. I mean, I would have said that Jimmy Garner was also my man of the match contender because, again, if we think about it, his performances have gone up another level from what they have been before. But his consistency over the last few matches, even in the games where Forest haven't been at the races, like against Barnsley and Cardiff, Jimmy Garner has been a player who looks like he's really, playing at a certain level and has found a level. And I think it's notable that people are now saying, well, you know what, Man United will be keeping an eye on this because he could contribute in the Premier League next year.
Absolutely. And I think, again, we've touched on this already, but we did good corners today. He was delivering. I mean, how many times, even this season, have we said we don't even beat the first man? Whereas, I mean, Leicester were a bit of a mess, but they were quality delivery from Garner.
We scored 2 goals in successive matches, headers from corners. Yeah. That never happens. Yeah. And of course, statistically, you're more likely to concede from an attacking corner than to score. So that says something. Okay. In terms of the clear-cut chances, that was probably just about it, wasn't it? I mean, there were a few efforts. Max Lowe had a go, which went just wide. Daniel Amate got one on target towards the end of the match, but it was a relatively routine save from Samba. And then Ricardo Pereira right at the end. I thought this one was in, actually.
Yeah, I thought that was in. It was just went wide.
Yeah, especially as it went through Lowe's legs, and you get the feeling it's one of those where, but it just curled away at the last. So it ended unbelievably 4-1, and Forest have got another Premier League scalp. Now, you did mention a couple of things that we have to talk about. Number one is that, firstly, I would say that there was trouble. Okay. Everyone's aware of the fan who went onto the pitch after Brennan Johnson scored. There's a picture where he's actually lamping Keenan Davis in the face.
Yeah.
And although he was able to get on the pitch, which isn't a good thing, he was quickly brought under control. And Leicester they've immediately issued a statement straight after the match saying, firstly, the guy's been arrested. And then secondly, this guy's going to be banned for life. Good move by Leicester to come out that quickly.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only response they could have really done to that wouldn't have been had everyone going, what's going on here then? It's that they had to come out straight away and say, right, he's banned. You can't have people going on the pitch and lamping the players.
And obviously there have been a few, Forest put out a statement. The chairman wrote a letter before the match to Forest fans to say, stay out of trouble, no flares, because we've had flares at quite a few recent matches. And there was the unsavoury incident where a flare went into the Derby crowd. A flare's one thing, throwing flares into a crowd of people is quite another, isn't it? So you'd expect Forest would do the same if it were the other way around, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the part of me is also slightly worried just in terms of, even though it was a Leicester fan that did this, and it was trouble with Leicester fans before the game, there's a few videos doing the rounds of that. But we've only just come off getting done for the fight after the Derby game. So we don't want to be getting a reputation for a place where trouble happens again.
Yeah, yeah, and with regard to that trouble in the city centre, so for those of you who aren't on social media, there is videos of Leicester fans. The thing that's disturbing about this is not like they've gone to a football pub and they've got into a confrontation with rival fans, which, although is also not okay, you kind of expect. They are throwing bits of patio furniture at the window of a restaurant where there's families having lunch. It's a sad thing, isn't it? And it's sad that we're talking about that on a day when we should just be celebrating.
Just to add to that, so I went online just to check like the match reports as well just afterwards, and at least 3 of the like big newspapers are their headline photo for the match report is that fan smacking Keenan Davis. So that's what they're taking away from what should be a really good night for us.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that we want this weekend to be remembered for football. I mean, Boreham Wood have got an astonishing result today. Kidderminster took West Ham. Yeah. I mean, poor Kidderminster to concede in the 91st and 119th minutes when they were dead on their feet. And of course, Middlesbrough beating United on penalties. So there have been some really great results. Plymouth could have equalised in extra time against Chelsea. Like, it's been an insane weekend. And if the first thing that people think about is, a fat bloke off the estate trying to lamp a footballer on the pitch, then that's not good for football, is it?
No, but, well, I mean, let's just concentrate on, we got 4 goals against Leicester.
So let's talk about something happier, because in the spirit of Fantasy Football League and Soccer AM and all of that, I think one of the enduring images for Forest fans will be the returning Joe Worrall, Nottingham boy. We've got this team full of players who've signed up to the Steve Cooper ethic, but we've also got this spine of Worrall, Yates, Johnson. We've got all these homegrown players. Joe Worrall, Nottingham boy, returns as captain when he should have been out for another 4 weeks, and manages to, down by his own corner flag, it looks like he's been bundled off the ball against the Leicester player. He ends up falling over and not only heads the ball while lying on the ground, but wins the goal kick in the process. That's what you want, isn't it?
When I saw the clip of it, because I missed it during the game, and I saw the clip of it, and I thought, is this like some footage of Worrall committing a foul? Because he does look like they're having a clash, and then Worrall grabs the Leicester player, but then falls to the ground. And then you see him like just sliding himself forwards on the ground so he can get his head in front of the Leicester player's feet so he can head the ball away. And as you say, he gets the goal kick. It's proper commitment, is that?
Yeah, so in one movement, he falls over, does the worm, heads the ball against the Leicester player's boot, wins the goal kick. And that's why, okay, Lewis Grabban's the skipper, but that's why Worrall wears the armband when Grabban's not there. And that's why
you could see. I mean, you were saying about the spine with the side we've got as well. You could see it on Yates's face. There was the bit where the ball hit his shoulder or something, and when it should have probably, when he could have scored. But you could see it on his face, like the commitment and how much they wanted it. And I don't think, Leicester had nowhere near as much desire for this game as we did.
I would add there that Yates still really needs to practice his headers in the box, doesn't he? Okay, so a really, really good day. But what's also interesting, both immediately after the match from Brennan Johnson and also in the post-match interview from Steve Cooper, both of them making the point, you know what, whatever's happened today, we've got a really important match on Wednesday. If you had to lose today in order to get 3 points against Blackburn, you'd probably take it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I was kind of surprised at the lineup we put out today, because ultimately the league is our priority, and we're not that far off. We've slipped up against Cardiff, and we're not that far off the playoffs, and we want to be cementing our position in there, which would be unheard of after 3 or 4 games at the start of this season. But there you go. That's the season it's been.
Just on that topic, thinking about the lineup today, so you'd think that with the exception of Grabban not being available, that actually that's pretty much a first choice team. What that also means is that on the bench, we had Sam Surridge, we had Jack Colback, we've got Richie Larea, who hasn't even had a chance to kick a ball for us yet. We've got Toby Figueiredo, we've got Xande Silva, we've got Cafu, who came on. Suddenly, with Mighton still to come back, and Loa Kembeso as well, still to come back. All of a sudden, Cooper's used quite a small group of players so far, but now he has some different options, doesn't he?
Yeah, and there's, especially with Surridge signing, and with the other one, Panzo signing, we've got that little bit of depth in the squad now that we probably didn't have a few days ago, which means, yeah, that's a very, very strong bench that we had there, and it gives us options to change things around if we need to. But it also means that, yeah, the fact that Grabban took that knock the other day isn't the end of the world, whereas just 3 or 4 weeks ago, Grabban taking that knock would have been. And that's a very astute transfer window. You have to look back on it and think, actually, he's done really well there.
So can we put the ghosts of the Charlton match after the Leeds match in the Sabri era? Can we lay that to rest, do you think?
Well, we've got to find out yet, haven't we?
Well, we ain't going to be playing Carl Jenkinson and Gaitan Bong on Wednesday night, are we?
No, that's true. But yeah, I mean, that's the biggest, in a way, the biggest disappointment was the Cardiff result the other day, because it just felt like, are we going to slip up when the pressure's on or not? And today, obviously, we did not, but then Leicester played their part in making that happen. It's, can we keep that relentless consistency for the rest of the season?
And in one of our other WhatsApp groups, actually, the Maradona the Midlands made the point that to us, it's one of those strange things. It almost feels like we can give the higher level teams more of a game at the moment. So Barnsley, yeah, it's the nearest thing you get to an easy game in this division. We won 3-0, but the performance wasn't good. Cardiff, the performance wasn't good and the result wasn't good. The main thing to say is that obviously Forest have got that perseverance. So they kept going until they scored in the 94th minute or whatever against Cardiff. So there is some hope there. But against Blackburn, you'd hope that would be a high level match and therefore a match that both teams would be up for.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of, as well, yes, it's part of it. It's the difference of style. Forest have always had a trouble with teams that try and stop us playing, whereas, yeah, Leicester just let us do what we wanted today.
And we're very glad that they did. So we will have a match report for you after the Blackburn match. In the meantime, Reds, enjoy this result, and we will see you in the 5th round of the FA Cup.